Our first group in session 2 is working with the New York League of Conservation Voters Education Fund. Bethany?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bethany Gammarillo, and on behalf of my incredible capstone team, I'm honored to present our final capstone, Connecting New York, Designing Thermal Energy Networks for an Affordable and Carbon-Efficient Future. Ask yourself this: has there ever been a time when you received your heating or AC bill, and as you went to open the statement, you were in complete shock by how expensive your bill was? If you have experienced this, you're not alone, and unfortunately in recent years, the issue at hand has only gotten worse. Since 2019, natural gas prices, the main fuel source for traditional heating and cooling, have increased 31%. Meanwhile, median household incomes have remained stagnant. The increase in natural gas systems can be attributed to volatile market pricing and the need to replace aging infrastructure of these legacy systems. So, the problem is clear. How can we transition away from these fossil fuel-based systems without leaving communities behind? One inexpensive solution could be air source heat pumps, which rely on exchanging heat, provide heating and cooling by exchanging heat between indoor and outdoor air of a given building. A different type of heat pump, one that is 3 to 5 times more efficient than the aforementioned, is ground source heat pumps, which rely on exchanging heat with the ground to provide heating and cooling for a given building. But what if we scale this type of technology to meet the heating and cooling needs of a whole street? Better yet, a whole community, or even a whole city. I introduce to you Thermal Energy Networks, or TENS for short. This shared system connects homes and buildings on a loop of water-filled pipes that are installed several hundred feet below the Earth's surface. The ambient temperature of the ground helps keep the loop at a constant temperature, and in each home, there is a ground source heat pump connecting it to the broader loop. When a building needs heating, the water circulates through the pipe until it reaches the selected heat pump. That heat pump then upgrades the temperature of the water to distribute heating or extracts heat to produce cooling. And what makes this system so remarkable is that one building's waste heat, take for example a data center, can provide heating to other buildings on the same loop, creating a huge opportunity for waste heat to be used as a resource rather than a byproduct. This shared system can be up to 6 times more efficient than even the best gas furnace, and can offer 30 to 65% annual operational cost savings compared to a conventional standalone system. But while TENS are great, they aren't all that common. In fact, only 1% of all district energy systems are zero carbon, non-combusting, and non-emitting. Our client was the New York League of Conservation Voters, led by their Clean Buildings campaign manager, John Furlong, and policy fellow Norm Alec. I would like to take a moment to introduce our wonderful team, led by our project managers, Pia and Renee, as well as our faculty advisor, Dr. Bob Cook. Our team divided into 4 key research areas, spanning technology, policy, case studies, and stakeholders. And this approach ultimately allowed us to develop our policy recommendation as a toolkit for our client. Starting with technology, we analyzed 4 potential ownership models to scale TENS in New York State. The first model is a municipal-owned or city-owned thermal energy network. The second model is utility-owned, or UTEN for short. In this model, the utility owns and operates all of the infrastructure. The third model is a public-private partnership, a hybrid model, where a private company owns the system, but it is monitored by a utility or municipality. And the fourth model is a completely privately owned model, where a private company owns, operates, and receives all of the revenues generated by the TEN. And because public-private partnerships balance affordability, scalability, and equity, they represent the most viable ownership model for scaling across New York State. Understanding who owns and operates the system is one piece of the puzzle. The other is understanding what it actually costs. Take, for example, a Northeastern affordable housing retrofit project looking to install a ground source heat pump. Upfront capital is expensive. This is when we can start to leverage tax incentives, starting with the baseline geothermal heat property 6% investment tax credit from the Inflation Reduction Act. Next, we can layer 3 additional boosts if the developer meets prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements, uses domestically produced content, and if the project is located in an energy community, or, in better words, a community that's historically been affected by the fossil fuel employment. Finally, we can add a 9% tax credit for 10 years since this is an affordable housing project. And ultimately, our project becomes net positive. The developer recovers all upfront investments and receives additional financial return. The next best alternative, which is an air source heat pump, doesn't even come close to the net savings we achieve with a ground source heat pump. And these incentives fit into a broader shift towards decarbonization. Federal support from the Inflation Reduction Act, geothermal tax credits being one of the few remaining incentives after US federal changes, incentivize developers in clean energy projects. Looking into the state, the Utility Thermal Energy Network and Jobs Act lets utilities build shared geothermal systems guided by the Public Service Commission. And then looking forward, we have the New York Heat Act, or the New York Home Energy Affordable Transition Act, as well as other statewide climate laws that create the emissions goals that these systems help to achieve. Despite strong policy momentum, there have been some implementation barriers we've discovered throughout our research. The first is capital costs. Upfront costs for drilling and infrastructure are incredibly expensive, and utilities still lack clear rate structures for how to recover these investments. The second is workforce gaps. There's currently a shortage in certified drillers, heat pump technicians, and building inspectors that are familiar with these types of systems. And finally, our third barrier is fragmented permitting and construction delays. We turned to our stakeholders to look and see what strategies would be most feasible for scaling TENS in New York. Our stakeholder team conducted 25 interviews with various practitioners, as shown here. And three main themes emerged from our interviews. First, the message from industry experts is to start small with pilot projects and scale them if they're deemed successful. Second, high costs and capacity constraints reinforce the need for targeted funding, training, and phased deployment. And third, policy and market enablers matter. Long-term success is dependent on tariff reform, workforce development, and public engagement that highlight the reliability and affordability of these systems. After looking at those strategies, we wanted to see how they worked and performed in real-life projects, so we turned to case studies. Colorado Mesa University showed us that networks with seasonal storage offer the most flexible and efficient types of systems. Framingham, Massachusetts showed us that supportive policies and defined ownership models ensure accountability and operational stability. And finally, Block Power showed us that equity must be embedded into the project design in order to be successful. Some of the challenges we faced throughout our research, as I'm sure other groups did, were stakeholder skepticism around the roles of TENS, delays in scheduling interviews with our various stakeholders, and finally, data gaps across current pilot projects. Based on our findings, we developed our recommendation for our client as a policy toolkit. First, the state should develop a statewide single geothermal TEN code with a digital application portal to reduce project delays. Next, they should develop a standardized thermal service tariff and customer classification system. This ultimately ensures clear pricing and accountability. We also recommend New York develops a New York Thermal Equity Fund to support low to moderate income communities, New York City Housing Authority buildings, as well as small businesses, alongside creating a statewide waste heat marketplace and crediting system that allows building participants to exchange thermal credits. Utilities should also expand their training and multi-trade certification programs to develop the workforce needed for TENS. And finally, state and utilities together should develop a thermal energy network opportunities areas map. Our lovely team got a head start on what this map could look like, and this map highlights areas where TENS could have the biggest impact. Areas with high, low to moderate income populations, existing clean heat projects, and strong utility presence. And the circle clusters represent the areas most viable and best fit for early deployment of TENS. Moving forward, we recommend to our client that they utilize and further develop our TENS opportunity areas map. Of course, we want them to use and share our communications materials. And finally, we recommend that they use our policy implementation toolkit to guide further decision making. And with that, we thank you for your time and attention this evening. Any questions?
All right, thank you for your presentation. This is already a project that is starting from scale up to scale down. All right, so, and you mentioned some of the challenges that will be associated with this, but you didn't talk about safety challenges. This is a thermal cycling system, thermal energy cycling system. So I want to know what are some potential safety issues that we can consider associated with scaling this project up? And also, how deep is the technology being buried underground?
Thank you for your question, and I'll start with the first one. I think safety is a critical aspect of any sort of infrastructure provided to and for the city. I think best case scenario, the utilities that are deploying these types of projects already have predetermined safety protocol that any sort of project developer and team that's building these systems would be following. So while that is a critical piece to our research, we didn't look too deep into it, but that's a great point, and definitely something that utilities should consider. And then in terms of the depth of these systems, they can range, but typically it's between 500 to 800 feet. But it also is dependent on the load that the system requires, how many buildings are connected, and what they're looking to achieve.
Thank you. So I'm curious about the map. So you listed off 4 different ownership models, which all come with their own criteria for success.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you factor in different ownership models, different capital structures in order to come up with places that you think are opportunity areas?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And our team members who worked on this map did an incredible job of, visually piecing together these aspects. I think right now a lot of the work that we're seeing in relation to geothermal heat pump retrofits and eventually thermal energy network installation, a lot of it is being led by utilities. So that's practically like the most common ownership model we're seeing in practice as of right now, especially within New York. And then remind me if there was a second part to your question. I apologize.
No, I just wanted to understand, how do you evaluate where these opportunity areas could be given the different ownership models? So I think what you're saying is that it's focused on the utility
Yes.
proposals that are in front of the PSC.
Yes, strong utility presence was a main criteria for the map. Thank you.
I guess I have a little bit of a follow-up question. So this is standard technology all throughout Northern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Sweden, Denmark, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Belgium, they all have this. And district heat is, pretty much standard in many cities. All of your images were of suburban developments.
Mm-hmm.
And suburban developments, of course, are the prevalent form of housing and probably the most growing sector,
Mm-hmm.
even in New York State. I'm curious whether you guys looked at the urban-suburban divide in the viability of this, because unless you have a certain amount of density, I can't imagine that it's that beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great question. Thank you. As of right now, Con Edison is running some pilot projects in the urban space, and those projects themselves have demonstrated their own challenges. Density, while it's great for the load that it produces and requires, there's physical constraints in terms of where the piping for these systems is going to go, and space is very limited when you're dealing with a concrete jungle. In terms of the suburban aspect, you see it kind of flipped almost. The load may be not enough to, sustain a system to this degree without having generous return, if that makes sense. So it definitely is case by case dependent on population sizes, density, and as well as the building uses that are in that specific area. Whereas if you have a data center, you know that they're going to be requiring a lot of cooling, but also producing a lot of heat. So I think it might be a deeper question into zoning and what buildings will be connected into what, but yeah.